Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Thank you. We are waiting for Björn, and I hope that he will be able to join in a few minutes. Thank you for joining this last panel of the day. This last panel will address the relationship between sustainability and additive manufacturing. It's been a few years now that we have been observing a growing wave of global protest and increased political and social focus around sustainability. This issue has become vital, actually, for the manufacturing environment because the more engineering innovations there are, the more sustainability concerns are growing. And the topic itself has been discussed a lot lately. So today, I hope we are going to bring another perspective on the table. And just a quick reminder, you are free to ask your questions in the general chat, and then I will read them for you so that our panelists will answer directly while they will be talking. And I will now let the floor to Sherry, that is going to serve, and AMGTA, the association for which she's working for.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be with all of you today. I'm Sherry Handel, Executive Director of the Additive Manufacturer Green Trade Association, also known as the AMGTA. So the AMGTA was launched last year at Forum Next with a mission to promote the environmental benefits of AM over traditional manufacturing. So I came on board in late February of this year as the trade group's first executive director. So we are a global nonprofit organization open to any additive manufacturer or industry stakeholder that meets certain criteria to sustainability of production or process. And so my role is to build and grow this industry trade group worldwide and to work with our member companies to help them take on the sustainability challenge of AM.
Yeah. Björn, can you go ahead? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Please go ahead and introduce yourself as well as yours.
Yes. So, hello everybody, and thanks for the invitation. My name is Björn. I'm working for EOS since the beginning of this year, and I'm responsible for the topic of sustainability there, to develop a sustainability strategy, but also to drive the implementation and to support our customers and also our suppliers in this topic. And EOS probably is known. We're a technology supplier in 3D printing of metals and also polymers. We're a family business founded 30 years ago. We're headquartered near Munich, and our portfolio includes additive manufacturing systems, but also materials, plastics and metals, software, services, and consulting. And I'm happy to be here because I think this topic is really important. And I also think that additive manufacturing can play quite an important role in the future with regards to sustainability.
Yeah. What about you, Erik?
Yeah, hello. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Erik De Zeeuw. I'm working for Materialise, which I don't think needs an introduction after this day. But myself, I'm working as a market manager in the manufacturing division for Materialise, and I've been holding various roles for the last 18 years at Materialise, so I have a big background in 3D printing. Besides that, I've been working or took on the role as a sustainability champion, one of the sustainability champions in our HQ, and with that I've been helping shaping the vision of sustainability at Materialise and helping around with various initiatives on that topic as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Erik. So, Sherry, Björn, and Erik, what I would like us to do this morning is really to keep in mind three main objectives in mind while we'll be discussing this topic: to identify the different levels where sustainability comes into play in AM, in an additive manufacturing production environment, or within a single company. Identify the various ways AM companies can address sustainability in their company, and their key benefits, both for AM users and AM companies, and determine if AM companies can actually play a role in helping their customer integrate sustainability measures, or how AM users, can, better, integrate sustainability measures within their company. But before we actually dive into the topic, I know there is still very little being done to actually drive sustainability initiatives. And part of that problem likely lies with the question, who is responsible, which is my first question to all of you.
Well, would you like me to go ahead?
Yeah, okay. Sherry, please.
Oh, sure. Sustainability initiatives can really start with any employee within the company sharing an idea on better ways to do things that are impactful and benefit the environment or lessen the impact on the environment. Whether the employee is a receptionist or an engineer or even the CEO. And visionary leaders of these companies empower their employees to make a difference and actually encourage employees to submit ideas and then make them happen by actually implementing ideas and trying to find new ways of doing things by taking employee input and finding a process and procedure to actually make that happen. So these visionary leaders, I think, are the ones that are consistently challenging their employees to find new ways to either reduce waste or improve the manufacturing environment for the workforce, shorten the supply chain, to reduce the distance parts and products travel, finding innovative ways to use new materials, bio-renewables, and other creative solutions to become more sustainable. And I think that these important initiatives have led to an increase in value-added parts, products, and services, but they can also reduce costs. So that's really an attractive benefit for companies in addition to making a difference for the environment. So I think it's an ongoing process. I think each incremental step a company takes that results in improved sustainability is important, and it's better to start than to not. A lot of companies, I think, are intimidated or concerned. They don't know how to do it. But all it takes is one idea that's actually implemented that can make a difference, so it doesn't have to be everything figured out from the start, because you're never going to, it's not a destination. Sustainability is a journey. It never ends because you can always improve and always improve and always improve. You'll never be perfect. It's impossible to be perfect, at least at this point, because there are limitations. So I think that once these steps are taken and a company's environmental impact is seeing an improvement, these processes and procedures, as they get implemented, they get monitored, measured, and maintained. And then new ones can come on board, and the process just keeps going and going and going.
Thank you, Sherry. Do you agree with what Sherry just said, Björn and Erik?
Yeah, I totally agree that everybody needs to be involved in a company. Yeah. But that's maybe for me more the ideal scenario at the end, because from my perspective, sustainability is a topic, or sustainability should be the way we do business at the end. So no one should think about sustainability separately at the end, but it should be integrated somehow. And that's why I agree everybody needs to be involved. I think for the beginning, though, it needs some strong commitment from the top. Actually, so from the CEO or any other top leader in the company, and I also think that it needs to have dedicated people, be it ambassadors, champions, whatever, who really drive this topic forward in a company, and they need to be backed up, I think, from the top. And my experience is that oftentimes this is put into the green corner or the tree hugging area, let's say. This is a big challenge, and this is a big problem from my perspective, because there's more to it, and we need to be careful not to put it in that area if we want to achieve something and if we want to have success. So I think everybody needs to be involved, and I also agree with what Sherry said, that there needs to be a business case. Because we cannot expect, also internally, right? Because we cannot expect everybody in the company being an environmental or sustainability champion, but we need to speak the language of the business and also the business people then. And that's why also I see my role oftentimes as kind of a translator between the sustainability side and the business side, and to explain to them, okay, this makes sense from a business perspective, and by the way, it's also good for sustainability, because this sometimes helps a lot. And I have a few examples maybe we can share later.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to you right from that point, because I have a question that was coming in my mind when you were speaking about that. But I want to say if Erik has something to say to add about it before we go forward.
I have little to add. That I can agree that we are all responsible and all can take up responsibility on this matter. So please proceed.
Okay. So Björn, we have seen that sustainability itself includes a wide range of topics that can often be addressed by several departments within the company. According to you, what are the different scenarios where sustainability needs to be addressed? Maybe you can try to answer that question by taking a little bit into account EOS, EOS examples, in your statement.
Yeah. So I think, for me, it's there's two big areas. One is internally, and the other one is externally. So starting with internally, I think EOS, our company, but everybody else as well, we need to do our homework first. And what I mean with homework is a company needs to define a sustainability strategy, needs to set targets, for example, CO2 reduction targets, and we need to report on this. And for that, you need also transparency. So you can only manage what you measure. So you need to set up processes, and you need to set up a controlling system or accounting system for that. And then you need to break that down. So who in the company can actually do something about the targets that you set? And those people or those departments also need to be accountable for this, and then you can start also communications. And examples would be a carbon accounting system, for example. So to really track your emissions and also to do something about it, or energy efficiency of buildings, for example, of your home buildings, of your machines. You can think of policies and guidelines for the company, like green electricity guidelines, for example. A guideline that would say, okay, you have to purchase green electricity first, only if it's not possible, or if the price is X% higher or something, you're allowed also to buy normal or not green electricity. Business travel, paper policies. So there's a lot of things I think you can do on your own, where you have the influence, and that's the more interesting part externally, because then the customer comes into the game and into the view, and most companies are not there to be good internally, but to support the customers. But to be credible, I think you need to do your homework first, and then you can support everybody else or customers by providing green solutions. And that's interesting. And you have to use your knowledge that you got while doing your homework to translate that into products or into services for your customers, and help them achieve their own sustainability targets if they have something. And that could be like improved energy efficiency of machines in our case, or it could be bio-based or biodegradable powders, but also applications that in the use phase might help the customer to burn less energy or to have more efficient processes. So, and I think that's the more interesting part. But for me, both belong together, because you're only credible if you also do your homework, if you do your thing. And then, of course, the more interesting part is supporting your customers.
Yeah, thank you. Sherry, what part of these scenarios does AMGTA address?
I really like what Björn just shared. Sustainability is external and internal. It really cannot be achieved in a silo. We all need to work together within our companies and partner with industry players along the value chain and even beyond. So to the point about really making an impactful difference, company leadership really needs to take the realm and take hold of the reins and direct the company forward by encouraging employees to provide ideas, but also to implement them and to monitor and track how things are going, so you can measure what's happening. You've got the benchmark, and then as you continue on, you can see the improvements and where you're also challenged, where you're not really as good as you could be because of something that might, have gone wrong along the way. So I think tracking your sustainability goals and your objectives, and including the other stakeholders. So those are, of course, your employees, your customers, we talked about them, but it's also your vendors, your suppliers, the community, government, nonprofit organizations, educational institutions, and other constituent certification entities to help you really track how you're doing environmentally. And I can talk more about that a little bit later in the panel.
Okay. Well, Erik, I know Materialise has been in this market for 3 decades now. Can you please tell us how things have changed over the years? More precisely, as a 3D printed service provider, when did you realize sustainability became a key issue for your end users, for your company, and most importantly, for your customers in other industries? Was it a specific project? What actually led to the topic in your
with our mission and focus on a better and healthier world, sustainability is basically a natural consequence as we consider it necessary to create that vision. But to comment on how we arrived there, I think in the beginning, when we were 20 years ago, when 3D printing was mostly used as a prototyping activity, there was no question whether or not this was sustainable. The inherent act of prototyping was saving so much time, cost, and energy in the product development process that it was considered as inherently more sustainable than the other methods that they were using. And prototyping still is such an activity that saves a lot of resources in the product development process. The last years, we have been addressed by the 3D printing markets to increase our economic sustainability. We got to improve our productivity, our waste, our speed, in order to make the technology ready to be making end-use parts. In that process of making 3D printed parts as end users, as end-use parts, we were addressed by some of our mature OEMs in customer audits, for instance, with questions about our environment management system. Next to that, with our IBR activities and our online ordering systems for our B2C activities, we had direct customers questioning our sustainability and questioning whether or which product from our portfolio is the most sustainable. So these are a few examples.
Okay.
But so we were partially inspired by external companies or persons, but mostly the drive for sustainability came from our top management and internal employees who were giving the freedom to present initiatives and who were pushing to achieve that vision.
Maybe if I can add to that, I think that's great if it comes from the inside, so to say, and if also then you can use this for customers. But I think if you want to have that big scale, I think there probably needs to be more pressure, let's say, from the customer. Because at the end, as you said, Erik, in the beginning, no one was thinking about that, and it's coming more and more to mind now, and it's becoming more important now. And I think, I mean, if you have a management who's driving this, that's great. But it's always very helpful if also from the outside, from the customers, so from the customers, they are buying the machines or the services, the parts, whatever. If they are asking for more information or for a better energy efficiency or whatever in this area, this always helps. But this is also a bit of a complicated situation. I also know from my previous jobs where customers want everything greener, for example, but also cheaper. And that's sometimes a bit of a challenge because sometimes that goes hand in hand. Yes, that's true. But sometimes there's also investments involved before you can get the benefits of that. So from my experience, it's always good to also go into partnerships with your customers or with your suppliers, depending on which side you are, and to jointly talk about this issue or this opportunity, and to find solutions also together. But it's of course also great if there's a real if there's a spirit and a motivation from the inside as well.
Yeah, I see. But let's try to see this topic from the technological side of this iceberg. Today, AM is positioning itself as a true enabler of applications that are ecologically friendly through lightweight parts, applications that in fact bring significant benefits across industries such as aerospace, automotive, and the manufacturing industry in general. But certain applications remain extremely energy consuming. I don't know if Erik can say something about that at the manufacturing level. Do you think that building sustainability into manufacturing systems and product life cycles, that at this specific level, at the manufacturing level or at the materials level, I don't know if that makes sense, if I ask that question this way.
I can answer this question in two ways. So I would say that materials are definitely a part of are a significant contributor if we specifically look at CO2 emissions, but they're definitely not the only one. Describing the impact of materials, they're mostly, the CO2 emissions are mostly originating from the creation of the materials. So there's two impacts. There's one at the front end and there's one at the back end, at the end of life. Most evidence shows that, especially for 3D printing materials, which are specific grades, they are powders typically, or they're extruded, that the carbon intensity is mostly created at the creation of the material. So what we as a manufacturer can do there is trying to minimize the new material that we have, or try to minimize the waste that we have. This has always been an inherent drive, because typically those specific AM material grades, they have a significant cost. So as an AM user, you try to minimize your new material. Trying to reduce further impact, which basically lies at the material producers. That's of course quite tricky as a user, but that we have to engage in that conversation with our supplier to see how we can take on that challenge.
Do you have any percentage of material reusability that AM allows compared to another production technology, for instance?
It's a very tricky question to answer. First of all, there are existing a lot of different materials. So we have polymers, metals, and ceramics. In terms of metals, the reusability of the material is typically higher, because you can remelt powders, you can remelt printed products. With polymers, which are typically a specific grade, there occurs basically a downgrade of the material. Also, the materials that we use in AM systems, in the process windows that typically exist, are quite narrow. That means that the material quality that is required needs to be quite high. And the recyclability grade of materials, or the quality of that, shows too much variability at this moment in order to immediately be used for high-end applications in high-end AM systems. So while increasing the productivity or the processes optimizations that can help that, we believe that is maybe not sufficient. I think we need to have more look at the macro scale of the materials to enable to use these materials maybe in other applications or in other markets. And this is a field where there has been little research being done. Actually.
As a 3D printer manufacturer, Björn, how do you evaluate this environmental impact of AM technologies compared to other well-established production technologies? Are there production applications, for instance, where we should prefer other, rather than other production technologies?
I mean, that's a good question, but probably a bit difficult to answer. I mean, for me, but that's also part of my job description, right? My hypothesis is that AM is better than conventional manufacturing in terms of sustainability. But there's certain challenges attached to that today, I think. So I think today we're not at a stage where we can say this is really true already. Also, I mean, there's a few very good examples like fuel nozzles or something else. But today, if you wanna do a comparison, you really have to do it part by part. So which part is it? How often is it produced? What's the material? How about the material production, energy consumption, the recycling rate, the waste, everything. And you have to look at it piece by piece, and the result depends on quite a lot of parameters, I think, what's better or not. So, but that one challenge that I already saw in my first half year at EOS is that it seems to me that we need to talk about the boundaries, how we look at this thing, because it might be, or maybe for sure, it is like if you only look at a part, then this might be better from an environmental perspective in a traditional manufacturing mode than in additive manufacturing. But the question is that a fair comparison, or do you have to look at it from a different angle? And I can share an example from my old job where we produced electric vehicles for logistics deliveries, and we said this is better because it's zero emissions. But then a lot of people said, but if you produce an electric vehicle and if you produce the battery, you have to look at the production process of the battery and of the waste process. And people compared the whole life cycle of this vehicle to just the combustion, or just the burning of the fuel in a diesel vehicle. And it was really, it took us quite a lot of time and also a lot of, let's say, marketing and public awareness campaigns, that you can't compare the whole life cycle of one thing with just a section of this from another thing. And I have the feeling it's similar maybe in additive manufacturing, where it's not so easy to just compare one machine with the other, but you really have to look at the whole thing. It might be that in the production process, there's more carbon emission, or there's more energy and therefore more carbon emissions. But if you look at the part that you produce that saves so much carbon or whatever at the end, or in the life cycle, in the lifetime, in the use phase, that this is much better than at the end. So I think this is a big challenge for the whole industry to define the boundaries a bit better, or to also drive the public discussion on this one, so that we can really say this is better than the other.
Before Sherry takes the floor, I want to read this question for you. Are there any materials that enable to leverage sustainability in the product life cycle or development? What kind of materials actually enable sustainability?
Is that a question for me?
No, I don't know if...
I'm sorry, you cut out a little. I wasn't sure if you were directing it to me or...
Okay. Actually, I was hoping that maybe Erik or Björn could answer the question, because it's quite technical. From the materials perspective, yes.
For instance, already biodegradable materials exist, or bio-based materials, but the difficulty is how are they processed afterwards. And typically you make, from a bio-based material, you make a plastic part that has very much similarities as a oil-based plastic part. So the question is, how is that treated? If you have biodegradable plastics, we're not using them, but I imagine that you could 3D print them as well, but then biodegradable is typically under very specific conditions. You can just not throw it away. You need 60 degrees in a specific environment to decompose it. And then the question is, how do these parts get there, which is often not the case. Is what we see with regular plastics as well. So it's basically every material can be made more circular. So we just have to look at the whole material chain of all those materials, and some of them will have less impact at the start, but it also you also need to look at the end of the lifetime.
And also, and I totally agree to that. And I think there's a couple of things that need to be done in this regards, and we're already in touch also with our suppliers of powder to see what we can do there. But there's also that you can also look at maybe clever ideas. I mean, if you don't, for example, if you have a normal polymer powder and you cannot use a fraction of the powder again. But there's maybe other opportunities with the same customers, maybe even to use that waste, so to say, in a different process of their production. So there's some ideas on this one, but I think if we, I mean, the more we're getting into industrialization of additive manufacturing, I think this topic will become more urgent, and also it will maybe be easier because we're talking about bigger quantities. We're also maybe talking not about only like these high level, high quality aerospace parts or something, but something more normal where maybe you don't need that high-end powder anymore, for example. So where it might be okay to also have biodegradable powders or even something else. So I think the closer we're getting to, the further we're getting into industrialization of this technology, then there's also opportunities for sustainability here.
Yeah. Sherry, I know AMGTA is neither a manufacturer nor a service provider, but why would you focus your actions in this context?
Well, there's definitely a need for better research in additive manufacturing regarding sustainability. So the AMGTA is really focusing on sponsoring rigorous, independent, and ongoing research. And the problem is existing research is somewhat limited, and it tends to focus either on material waste or machine energy or machine emissions, and there really isn't this life cycle analysis, life cycle assessment, they both mean the same thing, of really looking at the full, from cradle to grave, processes to get the part or product from the materials extracted out of the ground all the way through the end of the life of that product. And again, comparing apples to apples, you want to take a traditionally manufactured part and compare it to an additively manufactured part and look at the whole life cycle for both. So you're really getting the full picture, because if you're doing this fragmented approach on one and not on the other, you're not comparing really, again, the apples to apples comparison. So what we're doing quite a bit of is independent, rigorous, ongoing research. So we have several research projects underway. And if there's time, I can certainly go through them. Do you want me to address that now? Or?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we're commissioning these research studies taking into consideration the life cycle assessment. So we'll analyze throughout the phases of life. So from raw material extraction to processing to manufacturing to transportation, use, and disposal. Those are the primary stages of LCA, again, life cycle assessment. So this research will help us as an industry determine what our eco footprint is now, and it is also going to reveal where we really need to focus our efforts on. It's going to show us where we're doing well, where we're not doing well, and where we're horribly bad, and how that painted picture will help us make some really key decisions. It's going to help us determine what research we need to do going forward, because it's going to really reveal some interesting findings, and it's going to be well documented and, of course, independent and rigorous. So we engage with outside universities. Our first project is with the University of Delft in the Netherlands. And in June of this year, we commissioned that project. So what we're doing with that is, this will give us a good overall picture of AM metal and sustainability. We decided to focus on AM metal first. And this research paper is going to compare conventional manufacturing to AM metal. and looking at LCA along the way. And we've selected a researcher who has a background in sustainability engineering. So he comes from the design engineering perspective, but he also has a strong background in AM. So he's really ideally suited for this research, and we're really excited to work with him. So his team is currently examining and reviewing already published academic research, and we will have the study ready in November. I just got the first draft in, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. So this summary is going to help us, like I said, give us a good starting point on where we are now, and help us really with these findings see where we are at and where we need to do more work. And our second project is going to be based on life cycle analysis of an additively manufactured aerospace component as compared to that same identical component in casting. And we expect to have this research ready in time for Formnext 2021. So we're really directly comparing the same part done two different ways, casting versus AM with an LCA.
Yeah. What advice, Sherry, will you give to AM companies that are already well established on the market? What are the key steps that you think they could be taking to be more sustainable?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's an ongoing journey, and by this I mean that the path to sustainability can always be improved. And for companies that are already underway or already very well established, but they haven't done anything yet, one of the best starting points, I feel, and I think this has certainly been proven out by companies that have done this, is to get ISO certified. So ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. It's really really well vetted and well planned, if you will, in terms of ISO 14001 for environmental management systems. So this standard helps companies benchmark where they are now, and the companies have to determine based on their internal processes where improvements can be made, looking at key considerations, key quantifiably measurable areas like energy use and water usage is a big one. And then there are many others. And then with this standard in place, once this certification is done, every year that company, could get audited to see where they are at versus where they started, to see what improvements they've been able to make. And they may choose to make additional improvements along the way as they get further and further into the process. And they've adopted those processes and procedures, then it opens up room for, okay, let's do more. It gives them a starting point, and then they can build from there. And it integrates really nice into ISO 9001, the ISO 14001. So companies that already have that initial standard already will find that this works really well with that 9001 standard. Yeah.
There's one question that just come up. Is cutting manual labor in the complete process also part of sustainability, or do we need to keep people employed?
Well, as Materialise, we cannot see sustainability apart from people. So sustainability for us is a very much economic, environment, and people story, which means that whatever that we do in order to make the process more sustainable is that we keep creating meaningful jobs for the workforce in AM.
Yeah, that's the same for us. So, oftentimes sustainability is meant as environmental or climate protection, but it's more than that. And the social aspect and the people aspect, of course, needs to be in this as well. So I don't think cutting labor cost, as asked here in the question, is part of the sustainability aspect. Is more how can we be successful in the future while being a sustainable company, and that includes also to be a social company for our employees and to be a competitive company with, for example, green solutions that we offer for our customers. So I would really put it in that way. And also one point I always try to make is that oftentimes it's discussed as there's a sustainability strategy and then there's a company strategy. But from my perspective, the company strategy also always needs to be a sustainability strategy, because everything is in there as well. And that answers that question immediately then.
Yeah. I don't know if Sherry wants to share something about it.
I agree. I think people, planet, profit, right? People are, the people in your communities, the people that work for you, the people in your supply chain, the people beyond the value chain. Again, those institutions that I mentioned earlier are all part of this, new effort to improve sustainability and to make it part of the way we do everything every day. It's something that is becoming the future of the world, and companies throughout many different industries, not just AM, are looking at this and wanting to make it as the new way of doing business. And employees are a key part of that, because nothing gets done without employees. If you're not valuing your employees as one of your number one priorities, if not the number one priority, your company won't be around.
That's right.
And maybe,
thanks. Go ahead.
Just if you allow, I mean, you can also turn it around and say, look, there's some in some areas there's really a lack of talents, to get good people into the company, and what we found is that the topic of sustainability helps to get good people into the company, especially younger people into the company, because they might not want to work in the sustainability area, but they want to work for a company that takes this topic seriously. So I think this is really a learning or something to keep in mind. You will have more difficulties as a company to get or to attract talents in the future if you don't care about these topics.
Yeah, I'm actually glad that Denise asked that question about cost, because it was actually in my mind. We have addressed this question from a technological perspective, from an environmental perspective, but this issue must absolutely be addressed as well from the cost perspective. And in mass production, for instance, AM is currently positioned as an alternative to injection molding, which is much more commonly used. And while looking at this perspective, do you think there's a way AM can be leveraged while being both cost efficient and sustainable? Because we are still talking about it, but in practice, it's far from being achieved.
Yeah. So
I don't know if you agree with me.
Yeah. So to comment on the cost comparison between AM and molding technologies, there's the typical tipping point, because you have a first investment in a mold, and then you have a low cost molding, whereas the AM cost relation is far more linear. So you have a certain tipping point where injection molding gets cheaper than AM. This tipping point varies very much with the size of the component. So it can be either at 50 components or it could be at 50,000. The activities or the efforts from the AM industry in the last 10 years have been to drive this tipping point towards higher quantities. All more process activity, new materials, new material grades. The big material companies have jumped on it to develop new printing materials. So we have things like productivity, economies of scale. All these things drive that tipping point to the right, but they make AM more resource efficient compared to what it was previously. So the economic and sustainability aspect go hand in hand, and I don't see another way.
Thank you, Erik. I don't know if you want to share something else, or Sherry.
No, not on that topic in particular, but
yeah,
I agree with everything that's been said. I don't have anything to add, actually. So
I totally understand. Anything else you would like to share, Björn?
Yeah, I mean, there's one. So when I thought about what do we need, or how can we make it a success? Yeah, sustainability and additive manufacturing. I thought, okay, what we need is 4 times I. Yeah, the letter I. The first I is innovation. So on powders, bio-based. Yes, there are some biodegradable, not to my knowledge yet, and also on the cost side, but also on the machine side. So innovation is needed. The second one is information is needed. So especially, I think towards the customers, towards the public, and also towards non-customers yet. Yeah. So future customers maybe. So what are the green, let's say, the green benefits of additive manufacturing, and explain that. The third I would be impulse. So there needs to be a demand also from customers, but also probably on regulations in this area. And the fourth I is inspiration. And I think what we need more is leadership and front runners and companies and people who really drive this topic, and also proof that it's working. So like Sherry just said, they're working on studies on that, and that's exactly the right thing to do. So we need to prove that this is working, and if we put all this together, I think we will get somewhere.
Okay, so innovation, information, impulse, and
inspiration.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Björn. Okay. I don't know if Erik would like to share something, has something to share to conclude.
Well, in addition, I think the effort of LCAs and getting more evidence is definitely a good thing, because there is indeed too little evidence on taking that decision. But rather than, how can we prove that AM is the more sustainable technology, I think our efforts need to go on how can we work collectively to make AM more sustainable.
Yeah.
On that aspect, in preparation of this panel, basically, I've been doing some investigation, and I'm happy to see that across the whole value chain of material producers, machine manufacturers, and service providers, there are companies who are spearheading sustainability. So, I am quite stubbornly positive on that matter.
Thank you, Erik. What about you, Sherry? Do you want to share something else?
Yes. Well, I think one of the key takeaways from the COVID-19 pandemic is how this industry rallied around mitigating those supply chain disruptions and logistical hurdles. And they countered that with print-on-demand efficiency, shared CAD files, and other resources to leverage community relationships to make the PPE available locally and also worldwide. So the production of face shields, testing swabs, and medical equipment parts. And employees were really engaged and passionate about the work that they were doing to make a difference, to save lives. And I think we can harness that same sort of passion to advance sustainability in AM and help save our planet and have it in a good place for future generations, where we're not constantly taking, extracting, and not putting that waste back into the circular economy. We're really in a linear economy right now, where we extract, we produce, we use, we throw away. That throwaway needs to be put back into the cycle, so we are not constantly, degrading our planet. So I think this resilient industry has learned how to leverage AM in ways we've never seen before. And as we continue to grow and evolve and iterate, I think we're well positioned to advance sustainability and to take it to the next level and have a great environmental impact globally over time.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Erik. And thank you, Björn, for joining us today. We apologize because we have been facing so many technical issues today, both on the panelist side and on the subscriber side. We have received so many registrations, but many people could not attend the event due to these technical issues. So we apologize for that. And thank you, all of you that have been able to follow the panels today. I hope these have been very fruitful for each of you. And this was the last panel of the day, and now I'm going to end the presentation. But now, if you do not have anything else to share, and we are going to say each other goodbye in the networking room before the event closes at 5 o'clock.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.